really like fan of your work, especially your work on conscious parenting. And yeah, if you could maybe like start with like how you arrived with that.
Great question. Yeah, well, thank you for that. Appreciate that introduction. Um, Obviously, my journey to conscious parenting started when I found out I was going to be a father. My background during that time, my daughter's 11 now, so we're talking, 12 years ago, I was in the music industry. So I was in the hip hop industry. I was touring around the world, around the country. Obviously, my girlfriend at the time was going with me. I was kind of in this transition of leaving the industry and doing more local stuff, but I was very much in that headspace of that industry. So a lot of partying, drinking, that kind of stuff. And, I'm not ashamed to say that accidentally, surprise, you're going to be a father. And that was a game changer. That was like an instant um, pressure and realization that of responsibility and things are going to change. I was already into what you would call conspiracy and higher awareness type of stuff, new age spirituality during that time, even in my music career. So when I found out I was going to be a father, it definitely shifted the tables. Um, Ironically enough, I was already battling with drug addiction
Hmm.
from partying in my music industry days to kind of stopping all that and realizing that I was in a bad place. So that added the pressure. I came out of that hole and with a newfound awareness of mainly myself and how I operated, but also the world. And that hunger and thirst of trying to find out how reality operates, psychology, what does it mean to be a man, all these kind of deep topics that should be common sense to all of humanity, and that's kind of our journey. Um, so that's where it started for sure, and it's obviously life changing. I was blessed enough to kind of run into certain people that had more awareness than me and kind of educated me and my girlfriend at the time on natural births and the medical industry and all this kind of stuff. So it was like 0 to 60 in seconds. It was a full blown paradigm shift, is what I like to call it.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. Um, hmm. It seems like there was so much happening during that time. Like you're sort of overcoming addiction, you're becoming a father, you're deepening your sort of spiritual awareness. And it like, how did you manage all of that at that time?
Um, Great question. Um, Managing was, I would say, one day at a time. I'm in a co parenting situation. So, you know, my girlfriend at the time, we didn't really have that deep principled chemistry. So we decided we're having a child. We're going to stick this out as long as possible. We actually stopped even being in a romantic relationship together, but stayed and lived together for our daughter's sake, at least to through the formative years, 0 through 8. So that was difficult. That had its own set of challenges. I feel we kind of operated through that um, tiptoeing and one day at a time. But it definitely worked out. I'm glad we did that. But managing was absolutely one day at a time. I mean, willpower and care. It was waking up in the mornings sometimes and really kind of hating life and hating the situation, but forcing myself to do certain things, go to work, provide. It was never forcing to kind of interact with my daughter. I was very involved. I still am. My daughter's with me full time. So that was never an issue. It was the internal work of having this paradigm shift and really just hitting the grind and not only learning new information but applying it. And I think that's kind of the key. We can get stuck in these rabbit holes, and we can have, I call it information deprivation, where we're just taking in a lot of info, but not stepping back and dissecting that and applying it to our life. I think that's really important. And sometimes we need to go through these phases where we need to kind of check ourselves and see where we're at mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and kind of go from where we're at. I do a lot of interviews on the topic of conscious parenting. I work with parents, and a lot of parents look for that kind of that one-stop shop of just tell me how to do it, or how do you do it type of thing. And it's very much, I talk about the objective principles that every parent needs to know, but every family is going to have its different styles, its different connections, its different issues, and that's just part of the dance, the parental dance, and the individual journey of the family dynamic. It's beautiful. It can be hectic at times, but the more you embrace that kind of that chaos and transmute it into it and own it, really, then you can really find the growth and see the fruits of your labor. And that's mainly in who our children become, right? You see that later
Mm.
on in life, after the formative years, you can kind of see the qualities and characteristics of the early childhood. And it's there's no such thing as perfection. So being a perfect parent does not exist. We are going to fail. And I think that's a hard lesson for parents to understand. Um, and I take the student teacher dynamic. My daughter, sure, she's my daughter and she's learning from me all the time, but I'm learning just as much from her about herself and about myself and the influences in her life. And that has profound awareness and clarity for sure.
Um, so much of what you shared resonated with me, especially the difficulty of co-parenting. That's a relatively
Huge.
new um, circumstance for me currently.
Gotcha.
So I'm navigating that right now, and yeah, I would love. Well, so we sort of connected through Mark Passio's work. So how did you become acquainted with his work?
Yeah, this was I first discovered Mark's work in 2015.
Ah,
Just seeking information and stumbled upon his work. Had a really close friend that kind of was already ahead of me on that journey, and so I was able to kind of bounce ideas with him. I do construction, so I drive around a lot, and even at my jobs, I can just listen to his podcast or audiobooks. So I'm able to take in like a vast amount of knowledge and research. So went through his podcast series pretty quick, and remained neutral on it. I mean, a lot of the stuff he talks about is extremely profound, and it resonated with me. And I try to keep an open mind, and his work is just fantastic. And then quickly taking in his work and other great minds as well. Ended up going to fast forward to 2019. I went to Anarchadelphia, and Mark was presenting there. That was a very nice conference with a lot of guest speakers and like-minded individuals. So it was nice meeting people face to face. And Mark also did a workshop called Teaching Natural Law,
mm,
and it was packed, and it was great to see all these people kind of hungry to get on the battlefield. And everyone was
mm,
thinking it was going to be heavily about rhetoric, like how do you communicate natural law to people, like what do you say, what are the Socratic method, all these different kind of
right.
modalities. And Mark went completely left field and blew everyone away, and he talked about technology and technological
Mm,
literacy. And I was very
yes.
much in the mindset of homesteading, um, living off the land, and that's all. That's great. I still want to do that kind of stuff, but I was very much somewhat anti-technology. We didn't have a TV in our house, you know. I mean, I only
Same.
used the phone on a minimal level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, and it is totally valid. But to hear someone like Mark talk about literacy and how, you know, many people are Luddites and they don't have modern literacy, they don't know modern technology, and mainly, how do you get a message out to the public?
Right.
Especially something as important and relevant as truth, morality, true freedom, and
Yes.
principles. And that was like a ton of bricks right in the face. I was like,
Yeah.
it made complete logical sense to me. So, kind of had to go home from that, and it was very inspiring, and just, you know, immediately said, I was already battling it for like 2 years of how do I take action. Um, we were kind of already going out on the street and setting up shop and holding signs and engaging in conversations, and that was right when like COVID was jumping off and all the lockdowns and stuff. So we were in the streets, and then I just started doing interviews with people, and whoever wanted to, you know, hop on and have conversations like we're doing. And that's where I
Love it.
started.
Mm.
Started doing those interviews. A buddy of mine created an audio podcast called 93 Phoenix. So we did like 10 episodes of that. It was kind of short lived, but it was a great starting point to kind of, you know, get my feet in the water, so to say, and get familiar with the technology. And then it was 2020. Mark had the How to Become the True Media class. And that's where I took the class that we're currently in now for the first time, and it was mind blowing. I mean, Mark gives all the skill sets that you need to be literate in the modern age and get a message out. And then it was, you know, it was on from there. Meeting Mark face to face in late 2019 was fantastic. And then just kind of having communication through class, and then doing some graphics work from him. It was nice that, I mean, I come from the music industry background, so I kind of knew how to do, well, at least the concepts of graphic design and websites and audio mixing and editing and video editing. But I kind of felt outdated. I felt like an old man in that sense because it was so long ago, early 2000s. Um, his course got me up to par, and I mean, this is the fourth year we're doing this, fourth or fifth. I can't remember, but I know it's the fourth year, and I'm still learning stuff from his How to Become the True Media class.
Mm.
There's just so much in there, and even the classmates and students bring their own knowledge and flavor to it. It's fantastic. So
Nice.
yeah, that was the starting point. And you know, Mark bringing that fire. I love to give credit to Mark because I know he gets a lot of slack for his righteous anger and his
Mm.
element of fire that he brings. And I see him as the element of fire, which, you know, in alchemy, that's the first stage of fire, of breaking down and burning off the
Yes.
impurities. And he has helped many and helped myself do that. When he's in that phase, that lit the fire under my own ass to kind of look in the mirror, literally, and
Yeah.
tell myself, what am I going to do? Am I going to create
Fuck.
action? I mean, I had that
Yeah.
moral obligation and duty, so it's time to do it.
Yeah. Mm. I I had a sort of, yeah, so I'm like a traveling speech therapist. So I too like had the bandwidth to listen to podcasts more than maybe other people. And I discovered Mark in like last year, and like hearing the journey of his podcast in like a condensed matter of months, and then like the later episodes, I'm like, shit, like like I this is the cavalry. We are we need to do this. And I'm like, oh God, okay. So and I am also like, I am. not really into technology, and I need to change that. And yeah, so it's been like a welcome kick in the ass to be part of this course. Yeah.
Awesome. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of information to be,
Yeah.
I mean, even the technological class, there's a lot of info there, and it can absolutely be overwhelming. It was for me for a little bit, but it's a process of self discovery, right? I mean, kind of knowing yourself, knowing your own attributes. So, you're
Mm.
not shy to be on camera. You're not shy to be on a microphone. Those are great qualities. Some people might be. But my point is knowing your starting point, and then it's just one step at a time. Like for me, it was just hopping on a Zoom meeting and just kind of, just having free flow conversations with people, and just putting thoughts on the record, and then creating an audio podcast. And then finally, I'm just going to try doing some presentations. It's always a stepwise progression when we learn
Mm.
something, right? Even when it comes
Right.
to children, it's like when you observe children, there's
Mm.
the failure there, and that is great
Mm.
because that's, I
Fuck.
mean,
Yeah.
parents need to recognize failure and promote failure in the sense of you're
Mm.
learning what not to do.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think, especially in this day and age where, in the modern culture, a lot of parents just want to, um, they or children want validation, and I think parents want validation as well. And a lot of times
Mm.
they do stuff for their children. They don't let their children figure it out and fail. And the
Mm.
parent is the
Mm.
support system to say, it's all good. Get up, let's try it again.
Mm.
Or for a parent to say, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. Let's figure it out together. I mean, I look at parenting as more of a stewardship, right? It's a partnership.
Yes.
We are entrusted with one's care. That's the definition of stewardship. So I use the term parents because that's what most people can kind of know, and they identify with that. But it's good to kind of break that down and, like, what does that really mean? Do you own
Mm.
your child? Is your child your property? These are
Mm.
kind of, deep philosophical questions that need to be flushed out. And it can be uncomfortable for a lot of parents, and I think that's good because we need to get out of our comfort zone, talk about these kind of topics, and kind of digest them, and then apply them to our lives, for sure.
Um, a lot of what you said about letting children fail is like, I so agree with that. Like, um, I grew up with like very sort of perfectionistic, like cultural uh, attitudes that I kind of try to resist as much as I can. Um, and like, I also feel like just being aware of that, and then also, um, I used to study jujitsu, and when you start, you just keep getting choked. You keep getting fucked up, and you're just like, I'm just gonna keep doing this. I'm just gonna keep getting killed, and then you just slowly learn. Um, and I find that like there are certain moments where I just yeah, just I'll notice that like there's an issue with like taking a my kids are younger, they're like 5 and 1. But like they'll like take each other's toys, for example, and I just sort of watch them and I just like wait for them to like I just like I just like let them have that experience, and I try to see if they like how they resolve it. Um, but it's really
Yeah.
hard to just like not jump in though, also. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the dance. That's the dance of
Yeah.
kind of just knowing when to intervene, when to help out, when to assist, when not to, when to let them figure it out. And that's kind of that's the relative aspect of being a parent. And that's kind of where I say, every household's going to be different. I mean, I just have one child. So, having multiple kids creates a whole nother dynamic. And yeah, as you know, right? So it's we're there's a part of us that are kind of figuring this out as we go. And that's kind of where I focus on in my work, having that foundational information. Really, it's the foundational information for human beings, but it applies in
Mm,
every category, right? We're talking about rights and first principles and natural law, ethics, how reality operates, this kind of stuff are, the principles on relationships in general, relationship to the world, to our kids, to our partner, to other people,
mm,
and other beings, and all this kind of stuff.
mm.
So it's a fun process. I call it the dance, right? Because that's what a dance is. You have to know when to lead and then assist, and spin and twirl, and stop and start. So it's a fantastic journey. Unfortunately, the dark side of becoming a parent is understanding what is going on in the world, and
Mm.
um, knowing when to shield our children from the darkness in culture
Yes.
and the world and the influences, and understanding that they're growing up in this reality, and it is what it
Mm.
is. There's a level of acceptance, not an acceptance of evil or the
Right.
wrongdoings and the atrocities that are going on today. It's an acceptance of where we're at, right? Having that
Sure.
realistic perception and knowing our local environment and the big picture, and we can't shield our children from the truth forever. So I think education, communication, having that relationship with our children, and really being the example, mainly. That's
Mm.
what it comes down to. It's one thing to kind of
Mm.
talk about things, and then it's another to be it, and
Yes.
and be that example. Our children are going to see right through us one day, right? They're going to know us
Mm.
on a deep level. They're going to figure us out. So any type of facade or untrue belief systems or behaviors that we have, habits, they're going to see that. They're going to take that into themselves, or they're going to transmute it themselves. Right. That's kind of one of
Mm.
the aspects of a human being having higher level consciousness, which is simply pattern recognition. Even
Mm.
children in growing up in a bad environment, or a broken home, they can still transmute that. I mean, we see that all
Mm.
the time. I have personal friends that came from bad childhoods, and they are fantastic, great moral people.
Mm.
So, living it, and being that inspiration for our children, because our children are absolutely our inspiration to do better and to be better.
And also just like they're like the true weapons of the future, you know? Like if like we're fighting all the evil, like this is like to be able to cultivate a moral human being so early is like such a like cosmic gift, you know, as parents for us to like, yeah, like steward that. And just also like, I don't know, sometimes I similar to the technology. I wasn't I was raised by like narcissistic parents, so it's like I feel like I'm in uncharted territory like every day as a parent, like to be conscious and to be attuned and like um I hope I try my best to yeah, like have that dance as much as possible, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I sort of why I was like hoping to like connect with you and just like other conscious parents because it's like I'm learning like every day, like in real time on that end also.
Yeah, absolutely. Me,
Yeah.
me too. I mean, learning every day. That's the key, is staying in that state of receptiveness. And I think, you being a mother, having that strong intuition and connection with your children, don't take that for granted. Listen to that. That's
Mm.
extremely powerful. That intuitive force. Fathers are absolutely important. Mothers and fathers, but nothing like a mother's intuitive connection to her children. And a father, that protective masculine energy is there to support that and support the family dynamic. And like you and I are both are in co-parenting situations. So that is, which is the norm nowadays.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is the
Yeah.
norm. I would say my co-parenting situation is, it's not too great. We agree on a lot of principles, vaccinations, none of those, education and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it's more of internal issues, psychological and emotional issues that we're, constantly battling, and that can be tough.
Mm.
And I think as a parent that has more of a higher awareness than the other parent, that's even more brutal. I think it was, who was it,
Yeah.
Alan Watts, that said, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. So that kind of
Fuck.
comes with it. There's a lot of arrows and daggers that we take from
Mm.
the opposite partner, that we're doing for good reasons to kind of protect our children, because it's so easy to engage in a full-on war with the opposite parent. I mean, the state itself promotes this. When
Mm.
they want that
Right.
friction and that butting of heads within the family. So it's tough to definitely navigate. And self care is a big factor that needs to be applied, because if we
Mm.
ourselves as parents can't function mentally, emotionally, physically, then we are absolutely not showing up for our children. So we need to,
Mm.
it always starts in the internal, in the self. So
Yes.
when someone asked me recently, what's the most important thing to you? And I told them my integration and honesty to truth within myself first. And they were like, "You're
Mm.
not going to say your daughter?" I said, "No, my daughter is absolutely up there. But if I'm not being truthful for myself, if I can't
Mm.
show up for myself, then I absolutely
Yes.
I'm not showing up for my daughter." So
Yes.
that's the 0 point, right? The 0 point is up here and in the heart. And so we need to just make
And
sure we,
stomach,
and guts, absolutely,
like what you
action,
eat. Yeah.
sure, yep, the physicality of it. Um, so we have to take care of ourselves, especially in these rocky times, for sure.
Mm. Yeah. Well, that's great. You guys are at least aligned on vaccines.
Yeah, that's a bonus.
Mm.
That's a bonus.
Yeah. That's not the case for me.
Yeah, and that's kind of common in the family dynamic, for sure. You can try to communicate and
Mm.
and fight for that. Um, my experiences with just friends and other people, and kind of being in this realm, a lot of it is emotionally triggered, meaning that another
Yes.
another parent has this emotional baggage and resentment and spite towards the other
Mm.
parent, and that's a huge weight that is affecting their decisions on things, right? It's
Mm.
all
Mm.
all about programming and conditioning. So it's either going to be out of spite, or it's going to be because, well, this is how I was raised and this is how it should be done. So
Mm.
that um, um, receptivity of taking in new information isn't there. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. That's absolutely a tough one, for sure.
Yeah. I just try to focus on what I can control, like the whole serenity prayer, like,
Sure.
and I also try to, because I've also had like addiction. I've overcome addiction also. Um, and yeah, like what you're saying about just like making sure like your house is clean first is like so important too. Uh, I what are ways that you engage in self-care as a parent?
Yeah, great question. Um, I have a very close connection with my daughter. She's like my little mini me. There's so many
Mm,
aspects and qualities that I see in her that I had when I was a child. So as far as self care, I I sacrifice some of my self care things that I would really like to do, and I'm doing content, which I've kind of integrated that, accepted that this is my path that I need to do for sure. And then gardening, really doing things that my
yeah.
daughter and I like to do together.
Mm,
It brings me great joy and peace and excitement when my daughter wants to kind of venture into something new, and then
mm,
kind of go along with her on that journey. That's extremely healing for me to do that. She loves
mm,
gardening. I love gardening. So when we're doing that together, that is my yoga. That's my meditation. That's my sanctuary. So I love doing that kind of stuff. And I think there's profound wisdom in working with the land and working with the natural world. Um, especially educating children on natural law principles and
mhm.
sustenance and magic and all and transmutation and all kinds of stuff. So that's my big one. Working with the land, gardening, going on hikes and stuff, and exploring with my daughter.
Mm,
I'm a visual thinker. When I
mm,
was a child, I was extremely imagine. My imagination was always running wild. I was in my little fantasy worlds. I think that's extremely important for young children. That's active
mm,
imagination. That's play. That's a huge dynamic that will
yes.
um, create a sense of self for a child. And entering that world as a parent, entering our children's world and participating in that with our children, I love doing that, and I think that's extremely healthy and a part of self care when it comes to you
Mm,
know individual self, but also the parental dynamic. Because being an adulting, sometimes we forget to activate that play dynamic,
mm,
right? That
yeah,
spark in us that wants to frolic and play, and we all have that inner child in us, and um, we should not forget about that. So it should be
yeah,
activated for sure. So
yeah.
yeah, that's what I like to do. And my daughter is 11, so she's already on that journey of autonomy and
Love it.
self-expression.
Mm,
So having that realization that she's breaking away from the nest, like all
mm.
children do,
Oh
and
my God, heartbreaking. Okay,
I yeah,
I'm not ready for that.
yeah, I'm deep in that phase right now. She's
Fuck.
yeah, it's interesting. It's uncharted territory for me, um,
Mm,
and I'm just embracing it. you know, Embracing that process, observing, interacting, supporting, um, trying to be a positive influence in her life, and just kind of see where it goes. Because
mm,
as their age increases, right, their autonomy increases, and that
mm-hmm.
comes with a
Yes.
whole different set of demands. When our children are
Mm,
young, we are facilitating, we are guiding their minds. There's more things that we need to do for them and protect them on, right? But as they come of age, and their autonomy and their rights are there, they're always there, but now that self-expression and that individuality is really on board. All that needs to be honored. The
mm,
respect, understanding that our childs are they're individual beings, so we need to honor that, respect it, and have that ethical and moral standard, and let the reins go, and let them kind of blossom. So
mm.
It's fascinating. I mean, of course,
Mm.
having you have two boys.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's all different dynamics, right? Mother to boys, father to daughter. I will say this, and I'm giving you huge respect as a conscious mother and having that awareness and and working on that journey. The example that you are setting for your boys on what a woman is, what a
Mm.
mother is, and the interaction that they're going to have with other women and females in their life, that standard is set by that relationship that you have with them. This is called the
Yes.
anima in psychology. And like with my
Mm.
daughter and myself, our relationship setting the standard of what a man is, and her future relationship with boys and men, that's the animus. And mothers and fathers, we set that standard. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yes, I have. Um, yes, I'm keenly aware that of that role, and I try not to get overwhelmed by that responsibility. Like we've talked about earlier, just taking each day at a time. But yeah, sometimes it's like I'll be at like just like reflecting like on the day, and I'm like, shit, like it's just so much. But um,
Yeah.
you were talking about gardening. So like when you're raising children with sort of natural law principles, like how do you like what's an example of like how gardening exemplifies that, and how can you illustrate that to like a child
Yeah,
in their
absolutely.
formative years? Yeah.
Oh, for sure. um and I have projects that I'm kind of working on with what we're about to talk about, and I think this is
Mm,
fantastic. So we'll do the overview slightly. So
okay.
well, first and foremost, let's talk about the hermetic principles, the natural law principles.
Yes.
Mentalism, correspondence, polarity, vibration, polarity, cause and effect, rhythm, and gender.
Mm,
So all of those aspects can be seen in something like gardening, and
mm,
also um, the principles of sovereignty, non-aggression, self-defense, and self-ownership can be utilized and be an example in gardening itself. Um,
mm.
for instance, if you yourself are creating a garden, that is your garden. That's your space that you are creating.
Right.
So if you have two
Right.
boys, and maybe when they're a little bit older, they have they each have their own little space for their garden. So one
Mm,
child comes over and tries to steal, carrots or take carrots from the other garden.
right.
So you're
Mm,
showing a violation there as an example. That's not
fuck
your
yeah.
space. This is, your
Right.
brother's space, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So you could show, non-aggression and self-defense in that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
self-ownership within the garden itself. In the principles, the first one, mentalism, right? The all is mind. It always starts from the mind. So if
Mm.
you want to create a garden, what's the first stage of creating that garden? It's the thought,
Yep. Planet,
right?
yeah.
It's the thought. You plan it. Exactly. You have that spark in
Mm.
mind, and then you can draw it out. You can use your imagination, and then it's time to work in the physical world to start to manifest, right? So that's an example of
Mm-hmm.
manifestation. Like I
Fuck
told my
yeah.
daughter, you can think about it and then draw it out, which has emotion, like, oh, I really like how this is going to look. But yet, if
Mm.
it just sits there, it will not manifest. So
Right.
this is a huge
Right.
lesson on that. We have the thoughts and we have the emotions, but to manifest in reality, action is involved, right? To
Yes.
create something.
Mm.
So there's that aspect, and of course you
Wow.
have
Amazing.
correspondence,
Mm.
as above, so below, where you could show, you know, beats. Beet juice looks like the color of blood, and it happens to be really good for cleaning the blood. Um,
Mm.
um,
Oh yeah, totally.
yeah, for sure. A head of lettuce looks like a head with hair
Mm.
on it. Carrots. We can
Mm.
relate certain aspects to ourselves as well. The plants are alive and they need certain things just like a human being. Um,
Mhm.
the the well, we have datura plants. They're moonflowers. They are poisonous, so I'm not giving advice for people to plant these, but my daughter and I love them because they time themselves on the cycle of the moon. So the
Wow.
flower, the big white flower, opens up on the moon. So my point being is
Whoa.
that there's an astrological aspect to gardening as well. So as above,
Wow.
so below. So you can relate it
Shit.
and correspond it to the self, the human being,
Yeah.
and also the macro, the universe, the stars, the sun, and the moon. So that
Mm.
correspondence is there, and there's many others, but and then polarity. Um, you could talk about pH of the soil, positive and negative. Certain
Right.
plants
Wow.
like different
Yeah.
type of pH in the soil. What happens when
Mm.
you're on an extreme polarity, when you're polarized, meaning the soil is too alkaline? That's not
Mhm.
good for a lot of plants. You're going to get, the quote unquote bad bugs that are going to come in and eat your garden, and
Mm.
you're going to get um, uh, grubs and stuff that'll eat the roots, or if it's too
Mm.
acidic. So there's a balance. There's a balance in the garden
Mm.
with polarity. And then you have vibration, energy, everything moves. We can see the garden growing. So you can,
Yes.
everything changes as the garden does. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, there's those
Dude,
aspects of
I gotta
energy.
make a garden. Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay. Yes.
there's
Yeah.
tons
This
in
is
it
like
for sure.
requirement. Yeah.
It's great responsibility too, right? I mean, it's like,
Mm.
what happens
Right.
if you don't feed yourself or if you don't drink
Fuck.
water? You're going to get
Right.
sick. You're going to die. What happens
Right.
if you don't give the garden the care,
Mm.
the
Oh my
care
God.
to
Right.
apply the water, give it sun, all that kind of stuff. So,
Mm.
just as there are first principles with human beings,
Mm. Right.
right? The first principles of morality. There are first principles with a garden. A garden needs
Mhm.
soil and nutrients. It needs sunlight. It needs water, and it needs
Mm.
love. I throw that in
Right.
there. True care, right? Um, so yeah, tons. I mean, rhythm, right? The principle of rhythm. You can see the seasons change. You can see that a
Right.
garden, it goes from seed to sprout to bloom to
Mm.
harvest, and then it
Mm.
decays and dies down.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
a garden's a great method on explaining death to children. I mean, I think young children
Mm.
understand death. They see, dead bugs, but with a
Right.
garden, excuse me, with a garden, a lot of plants, perennials, they they bloom, they harvest, they die, they go in, they're in recession for the winter, and then they sprout back up. You can use this with bulbs as
Mm.
well. So that's a
Right.
metaphor for like life and death, that everything is just changing, energy. So,
Mm.
um, cause and effect, obviously, right?
Right. Yeah.
You can show that in many examples, even with not attending the garden. What's the effect of that? Your garden's
Mm.
not gonna do well. It's gonna die back, etc., etc. um,
Mhm.
and then the last one I like to touch on, which is gender, and this usually refers to mental gender, but of course um, there is gender in physical manifestation. We have the two genders, the biological genders, and there are genders within plants as well,
Right.
right? You have the seed, you have the flower, you have the fruit,
Mm.
and so those are good things to kind of pick out as well, and
Mhm.
identifying the kind of the masculine and feminine energies of plants. A
Mhm.
flower to a vegetable. So yeah, there's so many lessons in there to introduce these concepts to our children.
Mm. Well. I know what I'm doing next with my kids.
Not
Yeah,
to
I mean, it's
mention that
something.
it's, oh,
Mm,
sorry to cut you off. Not to
no,
mention
go ahead.
the working with the soil, which the soil is life.
Mm,
Like we're all
right.
connected through the soil. So
Yes.
the
Like, yeah.
microbes and the good healthy bacteria that we get by working with our hands and even breathing it in. It's really
Mm,
good for the body. Kids like getting dirty. It should be promoted, right?
yeah,
And
totally.
the connection and the interaction that we have with our children and the garden, it's magical. It's a magical experience. Not to mention you're growing your own food. So
Right.
seeing a kid, growing their own food and then putting that into their body for sustenance and nutrition, it's profound. It's profound, high level responsibility and self care.
So in listening to some of your work, I would love to talk about unschooling.
Cool.
So yeah, um, what has your experience been with that? And yeah, what sort of lessons have you learned in that process?
Great question. Yeah, huge topic. This is probably one of the biggest topics that I get from parents.
Yeah.
Um, so, let's talk about real quick. We'll just kind of define a couple things. The difference between schooling, which is, traditionally public schooling, government schooling, homeschooling, and then unschooling, which is also
Okay.
called self directed learning. So
Okay.
I think there is a progression, right? You go from schooling, public schooling, and then most parents transition to homeschooling, and then if they might stay at homeschooling, but with higher awareness, you can move to unschooling, which I think is the ideal place. This is the most natural. This is where you kind of want to bring your kids. And so, public schooling is obviously, everyone knows that. I was in the public school system, growing up. Many people were. It's forced learning, meaning that there
Mm,
is a hard schedule and you are being forced to learn certain things, right? I think every single kid would opt out of school if giving the sincere option to, right? But of course,
yeah.
parents promote that and condition and program and make their kids go to school, and kids just kind of follow in suit because it starts extremely young, right? With daycare and pre-K, and so
Mm,
there's already that conditioning, going to a facility in a building and learning. So that's kind of a long process. We're talking, minimum 15 years out of a child's life. That's counting pre-kindergarten,
right.
pre-K, and possibly daycare, which I don't have an issue with, daycare and stuff, but
Mm,
it starts really young. Is my point.
yeah.
Formal
Yeah.
formal school, 12 years. The modern education system, by design, was created from the Prussian era, and it is designed to atomize children and to condition them into becoming good workers, which that's an exact quote, from the organizations that have created public outcome based education. That's what they were wanted to do back then
Mm,
in the Prussian era. So America has adopted this over the years. It was a long process of outcome based education being adopted in America. There was actually a very small war fought from parents to the government. Not that many people know about that. This was like
mm,
in the mid to late 1800s, in the
mm.
Carolinas. There was government was
Wow.
forcing or mandating public schooling, government schooling, and in these certain counties, these parents took up arms and literally fought the state for it. So, anyways,
Why
depending,
that why that region? Sorry. Why do you think that particular what is it about that region where people were activated?
great question. I think it was a more traditional, well, back then, it was considered more traditional uh, community, tight knit community. And this is totally my opinion.
Mm.
So, parents still doing that very small, localized education system with their community, having a tight knit community.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
during that time where government is growing and they're mandating and government institutions are starting to form and stuff, and these people didn't really want any part of it. It was until it was the schooling and it had to come with kids. Once it was directed to
Mm.
kids, I think parents took a stand on that. So it's
Yeah.
something to look into. I'm actually it escapes my mind what they call that event. So I'll find it and I can send it to you. It's like a little blurb in history,
Yeah.
but could easily be found online. But anyways, so you have public education system, which most parents do, and of course there's other different avenues of private school and even charter schools, and even within those there are different styles of schools as well. Um, and then you have homeschool, which what is homeschool? Homeschool is mimicking the public school style and formation, but just doing it in your own home. So, what are the benefits of that? I do think there's pros and cons. The benefits are obviously you are, as a parent, you are in control of the influences and the education that your child is taking in. So
Hmm.
I think it's great. Homeschooling is great if you can do that. It's way better than public schooling for sure, hands down,
Mm.
because that's a parent taking their power back. The con is you are mimicking the the formation of the public school, meaning you're setting up a room or a section in your home that looks like a
Right.
school. A kid is still sitting at a desk inside the house from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So there's still that schedule,
Mm.
that hard,
Right.
unnatural, artificial schedule, and
Right.
I think it's very unnatural for children.
Mm. Mm.
I usually start this conversation with defining what is learning, what is
Mm.
natural learning, and what is artificial learning. Well,
Right.
artificial learning is kind of it's a oxymoron, right? You can't put those two together,
Yeah.
um, in the sense of, because if you are actually learning, then you are receptive and you are taking in information and processing it, right? That is learning itself. And adults and children are the same as human beings. How do we learn? We only truly learn when we are internally motivated. For instance, gardening, right? You are only going to retain information and actually learn if you are internally motivated, right? You're applying your will and you have that
Mm.
care. Like you really want to learn about gardening. If you don't have that aspect there, then in one ear, out the other, you're not going to retain the information. You're not going to truly learn. It's just indoctrination. It's just being spoken into you, which this is what
Mm.
forced learning is, right? It's just
Mm.
indoctrination. Excuse me. Indoctrination. Just speaking in
Yeah.
information. This is why kids go on summer break and they regress. They don't retain a lot of the information they're learning from school. It's because they are being forced to take in information that they are not interested in internally.
Mhm. Mm.
So that's kind of one of the big cons on homeschooling as well is, and of course there's different methods. You can kind of mix unschooling or self-directed learning with homeschooling, so you can have that strict structure, which I'm not
Mhm.
going to lie, some families and some children need a more strict schedule. I think
Mm.
it's definitely an energy trait and a personality trait, but
Mm.
not as strict as Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., mimicking
Right.
the indoctrination system of public school. I think that is 100% unnatural and not healthy
Yeah.
for kids.
Yeah.
So, there's a balance there to have some structure. Um, and then unschooling or self directed learning is you are getting to know your child, and whatever your child is interested in, as a parent, you support them and you provide them resources and you meet their needs on any given topic that they are interested in. So your child is kind of in charge of their learning and where it goes because they are internally motivated. They are receptive. They want to do karate. They want to do some type of activity. They want to learn about plants or bugs or whatever it may be. And
Mhm.
so that's self-directed learning. And as parents, we provide the resources and we promote that. And every kid is different. Some kids do not like to do workbooks. Most kids don't even like to be inside for a long period of time, and they shouldn't. Right? Kids should be out in the
Mm.
natural world.
Yes.
How do we learn and grow in reality? We interact with it. We actually go
Mm.
out in the world and we interact with people and animals and other beings and we do stuff. That's how we grow and how we learn,
Mm.
and that's how we interact with reality,
Sure.
right? We're not
Yeah.
stuck in a facility for long periods of time and just thinking we are going to know something. There's a difference between
Mm.
book smart and street smart, is what I call it.
Yeah.
Book smart is when
Yeah.
you learn a lot of information about something. Street smart is when you apply that information in the real world and you're hands on. You can read the driver's manual all you want, but when it's time to learn how to drive a vehicle, you need to get behind the wheel, right? And
Mm.
actually learn how to do it.
Mhm.
So there's that good balance. Self-directed learning is what I promote, and again, there can be a mixture of all three of these. And the reason why I say that, in my earlier work, I took a hard stance, and I still
Mm.
take a hard stance on the indoctrination system because I think it is brutal. But then
Yeah.
again, that might not be the case for certain parents that are in co-parenting situations. It's just a reality.
Mhm. Sure.
I myself have battled, the courts on certain topics, and that's a brutal
Mm.
system. And sometimes that doesn't pan out for certain parents, and we don't. The expectations aren't fulfilled how we want it to go down. Regardless, if your child is being unschooled or homeschooled, regardless, you are the parent. You are that main influence in their life, and that should not be squandered. Um, I think the disadvantage with public schooling is the time that it accumulates within a child's life, meaning the government school is logging in a lot of hours on your kids.
Mm.
So there's the there's the qualitative and the quantitative aspect of parenting, meaning you have to log in time. You have to put in
Right.
a good amount of time. And then it has to be quality time, of course, right?
Mm.
So there's that two aspects. But just because a child is in public school does not mean that you don't have an influence on your child, right?
Mhm.
The freedom
Sure.
and first principles always start within the home itself. So that's something for parents to keep in mind. And I think, all options need to be considered. And of course, you want to go with the optimal choice and, kind of fight for that. But it might not be the case. And, certain schools could be
Right.
different. Absolutely different counties and states are different,
Mm.
versus a highly liberal leaning county and school is very much different from, a conservative leaning school.
Mm.
So there's obviously those aspects as well. Um, and you can jump in at any time. I'll just keep talking. But if you,
Oh, no, I love it.
yeah,
I have a tendency to listen more than talk, so sometimes I just kind of like get lost and I'm like, oh, I have to talk. Okay, shit.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's cool.
uh, uh,
I can mention
I was
a
actually,
couple of other
yeah.
options for parents. And I myself, we are currently unschooling. We've done unschooling the majority of the time. My
Mm,
daughter's mother, she always wanted to be a teacher. So
mm,
when we physically separated, she
mm,
became a teacher at a Waldorf inspired charter school, which, if viewers aren't familiar with a Waldorf school or a Waldorf inspired school, it was created by Rudolf Steiner, the fantastic mind, occultist and spiritualist, and a fantastic teacher as well. He created this schooling, which it is self-directed learning. Now, of course, each school is different, and some schools have completely bastardized the concept of the Waldorf school, and some schools live up to what the intentions of Rudolf Steiner, what he wanted, for that kind of that operation, and it is self-directed. So when my daughter was with her mother, she went to this charter school, this Waldorf inspired school. It was actually a really great school. It was highly
mm,
self directed. It was also
wow.
considered a forest school because they're kind of up in the mountains.
Mm, mm,
And it was a good experience. But that was a few years ago. It has changed from then. She's moved. So yeah, so we don't do that anymore. But that's an option for parents to look into and consider. My point
yeah.
being with all this, especially for the co-parenting families, is that there can be a middle ground,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to take one parent to have the initiative,
Yeah.
because many parents just go along to get along, and they just do what they believe, what they are conditioned to believe, right, and what they've done, and etc. And they just kind of go with the masses. So it will take one parent to activate that initiative, to educate themselves, and to bring proposals to the other parent. Um, yeah. So options.
I love it. I wrote like a list of questions to ask you. Um, what is the relationship between agape and parenting?
Oh, excellent. Great question. Agape. What is agape? Well, in the Greek mythos, they had the well, there's really seven, but the main tenets of love. What is love? You have philos, which is brotherly, sisterly love, and then you have eros, which is romantic love, and then you have agape, which agape is love for truth itself. It can be, it can be the love for humanity, but in its definition and what it truly is, it's the love for truth and for divinity, and for morality and first principles. This is what it means, to embody agape. So of course, in the parental dynamic, we kind of touched on this first, is that a parent needs to be honest with themselves, and they need to strive for that agape form of love, that self-love and that love for truth and morality and first principles. So that needs to be, um, embodied first. And once we kind of embody that, and it's a continual journey, right? It's an ongoing progression. It's not like an endpoint, like, oh, I reached it. I reached agape. I'm agape now. No, it's an everyday thing.
Mm,
And this is aligning with what is right and what is true. And that influence that one has with aligning with morality and with truth has a profound impact on your children. Obviously, right? Your children are going to see you for who you are. They're going to understand what morality is, what internal ethics are, and they're going to see their
Yes.
parents do what is right. And I
Mhm.
think this is extremely important for parents to understand this concept and to live by it. Um, One thing I tell my daughter is that I will never lie to you. And I try to live up to that as best as possible, even with hard questions that she has asked me, whether it's about her and her mother or the world or,
Mm.
herself or anything.
Yeah.
There's many ways to convey truth. The truth is just the truth. And we can convey that in a multitude of expressions, meaning you can communicate to your children when they're at a certain age that you feel that they have the capacity and they are receptive and they will understand it, to talk about the the hard truth of the world and how it operates and what is going on, the human condition. And I think that
Mm.
conversation needs to be had. And you can show it to your children, excuse me, as well in the world. Um, for instance, the COVID pandemic, right? That was a great
Mm.
opportunity, as immoral and violating and all the injustices
Mm.
as it was a great experience for myself and for teaching my daughter, showing my daughter what immorality looks like in the real
Right.
world.
Yes.
And so, a parent that does not align with agape will be overly protective with their children, will
Mm.
focus on bliss and making them happy 24/7,
Mm.
will
Oh
do
God.
everything for their
You're right.
children, right? Because
Shit.
they have this,
Yeah.
kind of this narcissistic quality of my kid can't fail, or they're just doing it wrong. Um,
Mm.
so and there's many other characteristics that go with that, and obviously
Mm.
not being honest with our children. When you're not honest with your
Mm.
children and they reach that coming of age phase, they will see right through you, and then you will butt heads with them very hard.
Mm.
As far
Mm.
as daughters and mothers, this is called in psychology the dragon fight, right? Because the mother is not letting the daughter break away energetically from the womb or the nest, and
Mm.
there's not that
Mm.
respect there. The mother will not respect
Mm.
the daughter as now a woman or becoming into a woman.
Mm.
So that trust is not there and that
Mm.
respect is not there, and then they will butt heads. This is also commonly called, the rebelling years of a kid's life, which is really just a myth. What that really is a lack of respect and trust, communication and connection from parents to kids. And the same can
Yeah.
happen with boys and fathers and young men and mothers, and the whole gambit.
Sure.
It's
Mhm.
it's a highly energetic breaking away from the family dynamic and becoming your own.
Mm.
And that's an important process. I think that a lot of families have a hard time with, and that
Mhm.
is a lack of agape love within the family dynamic for sure.
Wow. You're like just going from like the philosophical and just like applying it. It just like everything you said, I was like, yeah, shit, he's right. But
That's great. That's
that's
great. You're resonating with that. That's kind of what I try to do, is take deep topics, philosophical topics, and then bring them down to the real world and how do we apply them.
yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Mm.
I mean, all these questions are great to ask me again in 10 years when my daughter will be 21. I mean, that's kind of
Ah.
my own content, and work itself is a journey,
Mm.
from when my daughter was a young baby to now she is 11. So
Mm.
yeah, it's it's food for thought, absolutely.
Um, I feel like I have another question for you, but I was gonna ask you about like, because during our sort of pre-conversation, we had touched on like plant medicine, but like, I don't know, do you want to like talk about that in your
Sure.
experiences or like, okay,
Oh yeah. Cool.
what, what, um, what plants have spoken to you
Yeah. No,
and what
this
have they
is
said to you?
excellent. Great question. Great topic. I'm a huge proponent and advocate for plant medicine and communing with these intelligence. They've had a profound effect on my life, especially coming out of drug addiction. I mean, I was sober, so like right when I came out, I had some. I communed with primarily DMT, NN-DMT, so it was not ayahuasca. I have not had the experience of ayahuasca, but that was had many sessions with NN dimethyltryptamine, and whew, it was some profound experiences. I mean, anyone that has you know has tried that knows it's kind of hard to put into words the actual experience itself. The messages I've gotten were mainly about myself, and continuing the work on myself. And it really was a reality check, a control alt delete on old belief systems and habits that weren't serving me, and to let those go and focus on what is true, right, and applicable in reality itself. So there were very grounding messages, which suits me very well. One. I'm a highly. I'm a Pisces. Well, that's one of my signs. So I'm a big time, and I'm also an air sign as well. So I can be in my head a lot and in the
Mm.
fantasy realms. So it was a clarification and a grounding experience. Um, Also, psilocybin mushroom had profound effects on me as well. I had some very
Oh,
good
sorry, one
experiments.
second.
Oh, sure. No worries.
Do you need me? Oh, that was my co-parent.
Oh, gotcha.
Um, sorry.
That's all
Good.
right.
Can we stop recording just for like a
Sure.
second?
Yeah.
This is like
I
so
can pause it.
unprofessional, but
No, no,
whatever.
it's totally
Okay.
fine. Yeah. So, psilocybin mushrooms definitely had a huge impact on my life. I've had some very large journeys on psilocybin mushrooms, which were really wild. It was more of kind of just exploring different aspects of reality, and looking back on it now, possibly past life experiences. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so I mean, again, I can't confirm that, but that's what the energy, that's what it felt like, that it could potentially have been exploring those realms. So, and then microdosing as well, from time to time, something I still actually participate in, very small doses, obviously microdosing and stuff, but I think that's part of my self-care regimen, going through these phases of doing that every several months. So yeah, I mean, I haven't communed with any psychedelics or any plant medicines in a while besides the microdosing. um, but I've had many DMT experiences, and then actually after that time, which was many years ago, I really got into Robert Monroe's work. Bob Monroe, he's kind of the almost like the grandfather of out of body experiences. So this is in
Mm.
the 40s and 50s. He wrote a series of 3 books, and I kind of stumbled upon them, and I was very interested. It's He does these books are very like kind of scientific. He's just journaling his experiences that he's as he's kind of discovering them. But I practiced leaving my body, getting into the astral realm, and I was successful about 10 times, and
Wow.
that was absolutely mind blowing. I mean, aside
Mm.
from communing with these plant teachers and medicines and stuff, those were very healing. This was um, exploration, but the last experience I had coming out of my body. I was just very much in the local area. I wasn't, flying to, different planets or dimensions or anything. It wasn't at that level at all. But there was a shadowy figure in my room right when I came out of body, and it had a neutral energy and aura to it. It was like hooded. It was like a shadow figure, but it didn't feel malevolent or benevolent. It was just neutral. And it just, in plain words, just told me the work is to be done in the body. And
Wow.
it was like, I got that message clear as day. So, and what he means is, the work is done in the 3D reality. Like, it's done here. There
Yes.
is a goal. There is a mission that needs to be done. That could have been implied. I think many things were implied. One, you're not ready for that realm, and you shouldn't be in that realm. The work is to be done in the body, in
Right.
physicality. So that was a
Hmm.
huge, kind of, psychedelic time of practicing those techniques. I still practice those techniques, but I don't take it all the way to, coming out of my body. And this might sound a lot, woo woo for a lot of people, but it's a real deal thing. I get into
I've
this.
experienced it too.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I would love to hear about that as well. But I do get into a meditative state where, if you're familiar with it, there's kind of like this electricity phase of, right before you can start pulling yourself out of body. I tap into that, and it's almost like a recharge for myself. It's a fantastic state to be in. So I
Mm.
do practice that. But
Cool.
yeah.
Um, I this is an unfounded belief, but it's based on my personal experience that I generally, um, in my own journey, I feel like plant medicine was an essential ingredient in my waking up to my purpose. And yeah, I actually try to like give mushrooms away freely to people whenever I have an opportunity because I feel like, yeah, like the lesson's there for everybody, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if everyone did, mushrooms, or mainly if everyone did DMT, it would
Yeah.
definitely help humanity. And I believe that so much that, I was, trying to get friends and, family members and facilitate these experiences, and I did. And
Nice.
some of them, woke up from those
Oh, good.
experiences.
Mm.
And some of them didn't have too good of experiences. I mean, the integration process is extremely important. The after the
Yes.
fact.
Right.
But I totally agree with you. Um, just how I viewed the world changed very much after my experiences with those teachers. And
Mm.
yeah, it's a great tool. I think it needs to be used wisely,
Sure.
and responsibly, and it will definitely blow the calcification off your worldview very much. It has that effect, and I think some people need that, absolutely need that. And I think some people, they are so far gone that it would do damage.
Mm.
So I just,
That
in
like,
my
yeah.
experiences of facilitating
Mm.
sessions, I never called myself a shaman or anything like that. That's, I was just creating a safe space for people and facilitating the experience. But after doing that for a little bit, I stopped doing it, and
Mm,
even apologized to to a few people,
mm,
because it felt a little irresponsible, because I was a
mm.
huge influence on getting them to do it when they might not
Sure,
have been ready, and some people really
sure.
were not ready.
Right,
And I kind of felt like, if like how I came across doing DMT or this experience, it kind of found me. Like
right.
I was seeking, um,
Mm,
and it just kind of fell on my lap. And it was like,
mm.
oh, you might be ready for this. And I said, sure, let's try. And I was like, holy shit. So yeah, I think it's a huge tool that could benefit a lot of people. So
Um, yeah. So I guess maybe we can start wrapping up. And is there anything that maybe you wanted to share that we didn't cover today?
I think that was a fantastic conversation. You asked great
Good.
questions. It flowed really nice. So,
Oh, thanks.
thank you for reaching out and connecting and having this beautiful conversation. And I highly respect you, and I commend you for, you know, stepping onto this journey and into your awareness and being a mother. And it's I'm fascinated to see, how you evolve in your own work and see where this goes. And I look forward to joining you in class. It's going to be a fun
Yay.
trip.
Thanks.
Sure thing.